Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
So let's talk about Aaron. We've talked extensively about Moses. Now it's Aaron's turn. So is he the only person who was a helper, a helper to another prophet?
That's an interesting question. There was also Elisha helping Elijah. So we see there is this tandem relationship between Moses and Aaron as well. And of course, Joshua will be following from Moses later on. So no, he was not the only one,
okay.
but in fact, he's one of the most prominent. He was the older brother of Moses, and when Moses was commissioned by God to go and deliver a message to Pharaoh, Moses asked for his brother Aaron to go along with him. And Moses would confess himself that he's not a man of many words, and he is slow in speech. But Aaron was to be his spokesperson. So in the book of Exodus, we read that God said, look, I'm sending you, Moses, as God to Pharaoh, and Moses as your prophet, and Aaron as your prophet. So Aaron becomes the spokesperson of Moses, as though Moses was the God and Aaron is the prophet. Yeah.
So what was Aaron's role? I understand that he went along with Moses to the Pharaoh. What was he supposed to do?
Well, apart from being the spokesperson, his rod was imbued with certain powers by God, so that his rod became the sign that God was with Moses and Aaron. And so when they would go and preach the message to Pharaoh, Pharaoh would say, okay, how do I know that God is with you? Okay, show me some sign. What can you do? And then the staff from Aaron would manifest the powers of God.
So I understand that afterwards, Aaron was charged, and Moses as well, was charged with establishing a community and building houses of God.
Yes, so Aaron would develop into being like the forerunner of a priestly nation who are known as Levites, as priests, and he, in that sense, would be the high priest. So there are stipulations about building the tabernacle for the worship of God, and then the tabernacle would have certain sections. The inner section is called the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest could enter that, with the sacrifices of the people to present it before God, and Aaron was that high priest. And that would continue into a priestly tradition in one generation after him, one generation after another, all his descendants who would then have the same right to enter the Holy of Holies and present the sacrifice of the people.
Now, I understand in the Islamic tradition, in the Quranic tradition, that Aaron is not seen as a high priest. I believe he was seen more as a prophet.
Yes, in the Islamic tradition, he's not thought of as being a high priest. Somehow that idea of being a high priest does not figure in the Islamic thought. But being as a prophet, that is one of the most prominent roles and most decorated levels of achievement that one could attain. In fact, being a prophet is not even thought of as an achievement. It is thought of as something bestowed on the person by God, a designation bestowed by God. It's not something that one can work one's way up to and achieve.
So why do you think that Aaron wasn't considered a prophet? Because I remember that in previous times you've told us that, it's very common for people to be called a prophet, more common in the Bible than in the Quran, right? That it's easier to be a prophet in the Bible compared to the Quran.
Yeah, so why wasn't he called a prophet in the Bible? Actually, I don't know the answer to this question. Hastings' Dictionary of the Bible shows that there are various strands of narrative that are weaved together to form what we now call the Hextateuch, or the 6 books. First, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, and then adding to that the book of Joshua to make 6 books. There are different strands of tradition, ancient tradition that were weaved together. And these strands present the great figures, whether it be Moses or Aaron, in slightly different perspectives. But I still don't recall that in any one of these perspectives that Aaron is deemed to be a prophet in his own right, except, as I mentioned, the passage that I've already cited calls him a prophet, that God is sending Moses as God to Pharaoh and Moses as his prophet. But that is the prophet of Moses rather than the prophet of God. But as high priest, nonetheless, he held a very important role and position within the Israelite nation.
Tell me about the golden calf incident, because this figures very differently in the Quran and the Bible.
In the Quran, the narrative is that Moses was called up by God, and God converses with Moses. And in the meantime, the people are getting restless at the foot of the mountain, and not knowing what to do. Aaron leaves them to their wiles, and they forge a golden calf, which they worship, and that is similar to the kinds of practices that are happening around them in pagan territory. When Moses comes back and he tries to take Aaron to task for this, Aaron says, well, I didn't want you to come back and say that I divided the people, which means that he made a judgment call. He might have thought that if he were to make a fuss over their calf worship, then the fact that they had already lost patience may push them over the brink, and they might rebel altogether. So it might have been more sagacious to at least hold him on by a thread until his brother comes back with more instructions from God than to bring up a controversial discussion in their midst in the absence of Moses, and then let people depart from them altogether.
But it seems like in the Bible, Aaron participated in it. Like, he collected all of the metal, and then he, I don't know if he helped them to build it, but then he built an altar to the calf as well.
Yes, from a Muslim point of view, this seems difficult to assimilate with the idea that he's a prophet, because the Muslim understanding of a prophet is that they are the best of the people at the time. They are the best representatives of God's will on earth. They not only follow that will, but they teach it to the people. So for him to have participated in this way would seem odd to Muslims. The Bible has it that when Moses said to him, well, when Moses questioned him about this, he said, well, you know, I just threw the jewelry into the fire, and out came this calf, which would be I don't know. It's not easy to see how the calf came out of the fire like this.
And then he wasn't punished for what he did, right? Where you would think that the ordinary person, well, the people were actually punished, but Aaron wasn't.
But Aaron wasn't, yeah. So that too is an anomaly in the story. So both stories are interesting, the way it is told in the Quran, the way it is told in the Bible as well. But for Muslims, the deciding factor is what is told in the Quran. That is going to be our perception of Aaron as one of the great prophets of God.
So much more we could talk about, but thank you for your time, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.